Hey, what's up you guys? It's Scott with Everyday Home Repairs and just finished up this project, and this is a part 3 of a series of videos showing you how to redo a deck. Often these decks have a lot of life left into them, even if the deck boards are in really rough shape, and that was the scenario that we were in for this deck. So we went through, finished everything off, and in this video I want to show you how to place these deck boards using a camo screw system, which is really nice and makes for a nice finish on the top. And also at the end I will break down all the costs for you so you know what would this project cost me if I did it compared to maybe you have a quote from a professional or two. So you're really comparing, is this worth my time? Is this something that I'm going to save quite a bit of money? So stick with me and let's jump into what tools you're going to need. All right, so before we dive into the cuts, let's go over what tools I'm going to use on this project. Overall, obviously, tape measure you're going to need, and then I do have this Wood Life Preserve. Any of these pressure-treated boards that you're going to cut and expose a new, fresh end, it's good to treat that end with this this preservative. So I just have that in a little pail with the brush here for anything that I'm going to cut. Now, in terms of fasteners, I'm using the Camo system, and I'm using the 2 3/8 screws. And also I'm using the tool which has the 1/16 gap opposed to the 3/16 gap. Because the pressure treat, if you use 3/16, it's going to shrink as it dries, and I don't like how large of a gap that would leave. So the 1/16 is my recommendation. 2 3/8, this is an 1.25 inch board. I'm taking the longer screws because this structure, a lot of the joists are old, so I want a little bit more of the screws sinking into those joists because they're not brand new. So that's the fastener system that we're using. First time using this, so I'm excited to see how it works. Then I just have a Makita compact nut driver, obviously an extra battery because you will go through them on a project like this. And then the bits, each of these camo boxes comes with 2 bits that you need for the screws. And then something that's super handy, especially when you're dealing with 24-foot long deck boards, is one of these BoWrenches, which will help you as you fasten one end. You're going to see some of the boards will bow out. So this helps you bring that board in and gives you the leverage you need so you can fasten it with that 1/16 of a gap between each of the boards that you're looking for. So those are the tools for the job. That's what I'll be using. So now we'll jump in and make sure our measurements are all good and that we'll have the correct overhang for that last board. Okay, so checking the measurements, I'm just laying my tape out and butting it up against the vinyl on the one end and then measuring out to the end of my rim joist, which is 167.5, but then I'm going to add a 1-inch overhang. So what I'm dealing with is 168.5 inches is the distance that I need to cover with boards. So looking at the math, so there's my distance I need to cover with boards. The boards are 5 3/8 or 5.375 plus 1/16 of an inch for a gap between each board. So that's 0.063. So overall for each board I'm going to get 5.438 is the overall distance with the board and the gap. If I take the 168.5 divided by 5.438, I get 30.98 boards. So 30.98, or right at 31 boards, is going to cover this for me. And that is with a 1-inch gap. That's great. So what I wouldn't want to see here is 30.1, 30.2, because what that means is when you get down here, your last board's going to go like right to here or right to here, and you're only going to have like 1 inch, and that's not enough meat in a board to sink the screws and make it secure. So you just want to make sure you don't have a small inch or 1.5 inches here, that you're going to have a sizable board where you can actually secure it. So for my project, it looks good to go, and I should have almost actually a whole board. I might not actually have to rip down the last board, but we'll have to see once everything's in place. Starting to place the deck boards, I will start on the house side and taking the second deck board off after all of them are laid out. I'm just marking the joist. And this is because the camo jig cannot fit on that first board because of the house. So you got to take the board out of place and you'll just sink the outside screw and just start it. Then once you have all of the screws in place and started, then you'll put that deck board in its position and start to sink the screws into the joist. Now, a very common part of this deck is going to be needing a bow wrench because you'll start to see bows in the deck board. I'll go into more detail later on how to use the bow wrench and why it is so handy to have. This is more the normal setup for the camo jig. You're going to place screws in both sides and you'll sink those in. The nice thing is that drill bit has a stop on it, so you cannot drill them too far. It'll actually stop you. Now, once you have that first board set in place, now you're just going to kind of get into a rhythm and you're going to get off to the races. If this video is helping you guys out, really appreciate you smashing that like button. And also, if this is a similar project to what you want to do, don't forget to stick around to the end where I will break down the full cost, everything from part one, where we took all the boards off and disposed of them, to this building up the structure where we needed it, and then all the deck boards. So full cost breakdown at the end, and even down to the per square foot cost. All right, guys, so we're about halfway through the project, and I just wanted to give you a quick review of especially the camo system, so the camo screws and then the jig here that aligns both those screws. Overall, it's working great. I probably put in, I'd say, about 350 screws so far, and really only had two defects, two screws that were not usable. I don't really even use this release mechanism. I just set it on top, apply a little pressure, and then sink both the screws. Additionally, so the camo system still highly recommend, and I really like the finish and the way that you don't have your screws of varying depths in the top that actually come in the sides of the board. The bow wrench. I know on my first deck project I did not know of these. They're critical, especially when you're dealing with long, like 14, 16, or ones like these 24 footers. You're going to need some leverage to straighten out the pressure treated boards so you can maintain that distance. 1/16 is what this Marksman Pro jig from Camo will provide, but really I just try to butt it up because I know that these will dry out over time and they will form some gaps between the boards if you're in a pickle. So if you do not have access to this bow wrench, you can't find it at your local supply store, you need to get the project done this weekend. On my last deck project, I actually made one. That was the situation I was in. I needed to get the project done, and I did not have access to a bow wrench. So I just took some, I think it was 3/4 of an inch square aluminum stock, bought it, hacksawed it down, and then basically replicated the push system. So if I needed to switch this around and pull something in, it would take me some time because I'd have to undo this bolt. But this overall did work for my first project. It will gouge up. I think it'll gouge up overall your boards a little bit more, but it will do the job. You can get the square sock, you can get these bolts, you can get the lock nuts and washers at your local big box store and make your own if you have to. So if you have any questions on that, just jump down in the comments and let me know, and I'll help you guys out. Also, all these tools and the bow wrench, and if you need more details on those, also in the description. Look below the video. So sometimes if you're on your mobile phone, you have to hit the little arrow and it expands out, and you'll see those links to all the different tools we're using. So I'm gonna jump back in and I'm gonna demo that bow wrench for you. So here's an example of a board that's actually already secured at both ends and has quite the bow in the middle. So a la needing a bow wrench to get that to that spacing of 1/16 or butt it up. So you just use the joist and offset that. The nice thing is the camo jig actually fits on the same joints as well if you set your bow wrench correctly. So you just keep that pressure applied, or you keep it over center on the bow wrench and it'll stay in place, and then you just sink your screws, and then you'll have your board in place without a big gap. So I'll continue on, and this is one of those classic projects where you go longer than the weekend, right? So I need to take a few hours each night and finish off the rest of these boards, but everything goes smoothly through the rest of the project. Now at my last board, there was an issue that I'll kind of go over there at the end to show you guys what it ended up looking like. As you go on, you'll get more proficient, faster, obviously, just using the Camo system and getting all the tools and everything set up that you need. So now we'll move on to cutting each side. So with all these boards of varying lengths, what I'm going to do is use a trim nail, a larger trim nail, and I'm going to poke it up through the deck, between the deck boards, every about 3.5 foot, because I got a 4-foot straight edge, and that's what I'm going to use to mark a straight line all the way down that it's at the correct offset. And I'll give you a little bit closer look at what I'm doing here. So taking that trim nail, poking that up through, just making sure it's within the length of my straight edge so I can go from section to section, and then offsetting and taking a 1.5 inch measurement because I want a 1.5 inch overhang, and that is where my line will be made. Then taking that straight line and using a circular saw. I'm not using a guide. If you're not comfortable with just freehanding this and following that line and taking your time, you could install a 2x4 or some other straight edge and then just run your circular saw along that straight edge. Then don't forget, when you cut an exposed end of each of these pressure treated boards, you want to treat those with the Wood Life preservative.
All right, so all the deck boards on in this phase, part 3 of the deck rebuilding or redoing process is completed. So far, I'm really happy with the end product. These long 24-footers stretch the whole way without having to butt 2 different deck boards together. The only thing that I kind of screwed up on is I did measure at the start, making sure that I would have enough board at the end to have an overhang, and it would be wide enough that I'd have to rip it and be wide enough to actually have some surface to screw into, like 2 inches or 2.5 inches. That wasn't the case. So by the time I got all my boards stretched out, which was 30 boards to stretch this full length, it actually has exposed the rim joist. So as it stands right now, I have about 1 inch or 3/4 inch of rim joist exposed, opposed to an overlap, which I wanted 1.5 inches. So this side, we're going to do a lot of seating and planter boxes. Those are future videos that you'll also be seeing, along with the stairs. A lot of different tools. I went over the tools at the start, but then there's a few things I had to add in to get it done. So look down in the description and you'll see all the links to the tools, so you'll have the tools needed to do this job. If you're on your laptop, you'll see the description under the video and it'll say see more, and you can expand it out and see everything. If you're on your mobile, it's kind of hidden. There's the title of the video and then this little bitty arrow off the side. You just click that and it expands out the description. So like I said, I'd review, let's go over cost so you guys know what to expect, and also you can compare it to if you have a professional quoting this job out. You might be surprised what the material costs are actually. So this deck is a monster. It's pretty big. It's 336 total square feet. So that is a big deck, at least from what I'm used to. The total cost for like screws and hardware, I spent $100. The camo screws themselves to secure the deck boards and the actual jig or tool to put those in, $150 all in. Post repair, you saw that I had to do the post repair on part 2 of this series, and that cost me $50 in overall cost. The disposal from part 1 of the series was $175, so rolling that in. Wood, so wood's obviously the big component of the cost. So for the deck boards and also the structure, the rim joist and the additional joist that I got, that was $1,700, so $1,700. And then some shipping costs on that was about $100, because these were monsters, and I do have a truck, but I wasn't going to try to transport 24-foot boards with the truck. So what does that mean? So a total cost of $2,275. I'd say that's probably $2,000 towards decking, the actual decking surface and everything associated with that, and $275 for getting the structure back in shape. If we take the $2,275 and we divide that by the square footage, and this is where it can relate to you, so the square footage being 336, that gives about $6.75 per square foot. So if you want to estimate your costs, measure out your deck, right? Your length and your width, multiply those together, get your square footage or your area of your deck, and then multiply that by $6.75. I'm in the Midwest, depending on where you're at, maybe there's a little bit higher cost, but that will give you something to go off of. So that's it. Like I said, there's going to be more videos out here on the seating, on the planter boxes. Those are already out, most likely when you're watching this. And every project's a little different. So let me know if you have questions. I'm always in the comments. And then we also have a Facebook community Facebook group under the same name, and that is Everyday Home Repairs Community. And that's where you can share pictures and videos and kind of go back and forth, and we can dig in a little bit more on your project and try to help you out. So if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. We got more videos coming out on a weekly basis. And also don't forget, if this helped you out, give us a like, and we're going to catch you on the next one. Take care.